Good evening, everybody. This is Dave Eldon. With me is Dalton Grimes, and today we've got a special treat for all of you.
David, every stream is a special treat.
That's true.
Okay. I just want to clarify.
Yes.
What happens when we have an episode that's super special? Do you feel like you're setting the bar too high every time?
No.
Okay.
No. I think that if you're not excited about the content you're creating, how can other people be excited about it? And I really think that, like, so far, every episode has been something that I've been excited to talk about. And so this is one that actually you came up with the idea to talk about it. And so I'll let you introduce this one.
Well, hopefully you like it too.
I did like it.
So tonight we are going to be talking about running a competitive REL draft or event in your store.
Any type of event.
Yeah. So for those of you who are of a certain level, we'll say, this could be about running PPTQs at your store or SCG Invitational qualifiers.
Yeah.
Some of these larger scale events, even something such as an RPTQ can be run in a store.
I've done it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you want to be aware of. If you haven't made L2 yet, or you're working on it and you need some other opportunities, this could be helping out at a PPTQ or SCG Invitational qualifier, as these are things that occur in store and you're going to need some help with, but it'll give you a great opportunity. Or this could also be just any other competitive REL event your store wants to run. I know that personally the stores that I visit tend to be a little more on the fun side. Less competitive, more about cool interactions, everyone getting to do their thing and having a good time. I don't think David's that way.
Well, I mean, like, my store that I go to is a different store than the one that he usually goes to.
Yeah.
But that being said, competitive REL events at stores is something that's very individualized. Mm-hmm. So we can give you some general advice about what we think is like the best ways to handle certain stuff, but you are going to be the best position to know what your specific player base is going to be interested in. So, obviously everything that we say is like guiding principles, and you are in charge of putting those principles into action. So yeah, with that, let's talk about what are some of the challenges specific to running a competitive REL event in a store. Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back, because most events at a store is going to be regular REL, right? Like that's pretty much how it works. Every F&M, that's regular REL, game day, pre-release. So I guess it's not game day anymore. It's like Magic
Store
Showcase or something. Yeah. So all that stuff's regular REL. So competitive REL events, what types of events would that entail? The ones that he said, and I will add one additional event type, which is that a store can just decide that it's running an event at competitive REL. The reason that they would do that is mostly because, like, they have big money prizes on the line. If you have big money prizes on the line, you want to be competitive REL because you want everybody to take things a little bit more seriously as far as rules and policy enforcement is concerned. That's going to keep everybody who's playing in the event, everybody's on the same page as far as why we're there. There's two types of events I like to say. There's the kind where you're playing for fun and where you're playing for money. And of course, those can be the same type of thing, but ordinarily, like, if you're doing one of those things, you're probably not doing the other one of those things. So
I don't know. Making money is pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The fun can come from playing Magic or from winning prizes.
So I would definitely advise with that, think about the event you're running and think whether or not your event should be run at competitive REL.
Once the prize purse exceeds a certain amount, then you might want to talk to the store owner about that possibility.
Yeah. So a big thing you'll see, $1K prize pools.
Yeah.
$1,000 will be distributed among all contestants.
Yeah. If any one person is getting $100, then that'd be a good kind of a cutoff point, in my opinion, to start talking about that kind of thing.
Exactly. So if you're doing, for example, your store's pre-release, that doesn't need to be at competitive REL. Does your store owner want to put $1,000 on their pre-release event? That sounds kind of strange to me, and something that you should definitely advise your store owner or tournament organizer that's not the point of a pre-release. The point of a pre-release is to have fun and should be judged at regular.
Yeah.
But if you're doing, I've had experience with memorial tournaments running
Yeah.
competitive REL, as they have cash prizes available for the contestants, for the players.
Yeah.
So first off, when running a competitive REL event, think does it need to be?
Yeah. My example that I was going to use is Cast a Spell, a charity event that's run in Toledo, and Cast a Spell on MS has a they had a legacy event that they were running, and the winner got a Judge Promo Force of Will. And
Ooh.
so yeah,
You judged that?
Yes,
Don't you need one more?
I was the head judge. I do need one more. Unfortunately, I volunteered to judge at that event, so I couldn't play. Yeah, if anybody has any Judge Promo Force of Wills for trade, go ahead and email judgingftw@gmail.com, and we'll talk.
You're just gonna plug that right in our stream?
I mean,
Okay, no shame. Ladies and gentlemen, no shame.
we have transgressed the shame barrier far and away. Check out our Patreon that we don't have yet, but
Stop it.
so okay,
Stop it.
that is why we would run a competitive REL event. So there's two main reasons. Summing up, there's two reasons, which is you're forced to, which is the case for PPTQs and 1K or IQs and that sort of stuff, or you're incentivized to due to the fact that people are playing for big money prizes. So those are the two reasons why you would run a competitive REL event. So now let's talk about like what the differences are.
Because there certainly are.
Yeah. For sure. There's actually a couple of different categories of differences. So let's talk first about the differences in enforcement, right? So like at a regular REL, it's basically like, hey, everybody's having fun. If someone makes a mistake, you just naughty,
Yep.
you shouldn't do that, and then you fix it, right? Like that's basically what it is. Now, competitive REL is different, obviously. We don't wag the finger as much. We still do from time to time.
We wag the finger, but it also comes with
We
a
also
little bit of red ink.
we also wag the finger with one of those Pentel G2s. I unfortunately do not have mine with me right now.
Can we get a sponsor from G2?
Oh, that would be pretty sweet. I think we don't mention them enough, but we could mention you more. If anyone from Pentel is watching right now, go ahead and email Johnny. So that's the difference in enforcement is we have penalties at competitive REL, and actual real live big boy penalties that get written in red ink on the back of your result slip and entered in by the scorekeeper into WER. And this is an important one because if you're running at store level, you want to make sure that your scorekeeper knows what they are supposed to do with those, because since most store level events are run at regular REL, and there is a very real chance that your score level or your store level scorekeeper has never had to actually input a penalty into WER before. So this is where watch our upcoming episode that we have thought about but have not put into production yet on how to do WER. That is another topic that we are kicking around.
Yeah.
That is something that it would be nice for you to know how to do if you're a judge at a competitive REL event, because it might come up.
Yes, definitely know how to use WER. Make sure someone at your store does, because these things are going to be tracked by wizards, and at a regular event, you don't need to put them in because you simply alleviate the problems at the table.
Yeah.
And it never goes anywhere else.
Yeah.
But at competitive REL, these are tracked so that wizards could see a trend and say, well, this player has mistriggered, or not mistriggered, that's not a good one. This player has, committed hidden card error at the last 40 events he's been to.
Or maybe he started a deck with sideboard cards in it like 5 times in a row.
5 tournaments in a row.
Interesting.
And then wizards can say, well, maybe this person shouldn't be playing at events.
Yeah, so that's what the penalties are for, and that's why we enter them into the WER, is because if someone commits the same type of penalty too many times in a row, then wizards can send them a nasty gram and tell them to stop, basically.
Yeah. However, what comes with penalties is the folks on the other end. So if your store mostly runs regular rules enforcement level, then chances are that the players there aren't used to receiving any sort of penalty with their fix. They say, oh, hey, judge, I messed up, fix it. You do, and then they play on.
Yeah.
They don't have that red ink glaring at them the entire match on their slip there. So if you're interested in running a competitive REL event at your store, you're going to need to make sure that players are familiar with that.
Yes.
You can't just surprise them and say, oh, ha, 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 now you have a penalty. That needs to be very clearly stated.
Yeah, and this is a big thing that I do a lot of PPTQs, and most of the stores that I run at is like the same store I work, and I work with them every quarter. So they know what a PPTQ is, they know what's going on. But every now and then I'll pick up a PPTQ for a store that I've never worked at before, and it'll sometimes be like one of these more fun-oriented stores. And so I'll have to make an announcement at the beginning of the day that's like, so remember, this is a little bit more serious than a F&M or a pre-release. And then you can like talk about like how penalties get handled and what the red ink is for and what happens after. When you're dealing with people like that, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have is make sure that they know that even though it's a penalty and it's not something that they can just like forget about, it isn't something that oh my, because like when someone says you're getting a warning, that's like serious business. If you've like never played at a competitive REL event before, so you have to make sure that they understand like it shouldn't affect you for the rest of the day as long as you play carefully. And the only reason that we track these is to make sure that people don't commit the same mistake a bunch of times, and this way we can catch on to people who do stuff like that. So that's the thing, you want to be diplomatic, and those are the types of things that you want to focus on when you're giving those explanations.
Another thing I also run into is when you switch from regular rules enforcement level to competitive, tardiness comes up.
Yes.
And that's a big one that you want to announce at the beginning of your setting, is that at regular, if you show up anywhere from 0 to 10 minutes late, you just get an extension and you play.
Yeah.
However, at competitive, depending on whatever allotment of time your judge offers, it could be 0 minutes, 1 minute, 2, 3.
Yeah.
0 and 3 tend to be the most common that I've experienced.
Right.
But if you show up after that, you receive a game loss.
Yes.
Players may not know if they can sideboard for this. Players may not know why they're receiving a game loss.
Yeah.
They may say, oh, well, judge, I was in the bathroom. Of course I didn't mean to be late. They don't know that they need to tell a judge that they're going to be using the restroom. So there's a lot of information that you do need to cover at the beginning of your event, not only for your sake, but for the players as well.
Yeah. And another good thing you can do to kind of be proactive about this sort of stuff is one of the most common ways that people can be late is if they're out smoking, right? So like in the U.S., pretty much most stores are not going to allow smoking inside. And so as a result, if you're smoking, you're going to be outside, and it's going to happen in between rounds. So it's a good idea to like go outside after you post the pairings and tell the people who are out there, hey, pairings are up, be sure to come on in and take a look. So that's like a proactive thing that you can do to kind of alleviate those types of issues before they come up.
Yes, I had to give my first game loss actually at a competitive REL event because a player's outside smoking.
Yep.
And missed time. I felt
I
felt bad for him, but
Those are the rules.
Those are the rules.
Yep.
And that's another thing that you have to be prepared for is you need to be able to handle giving these. If you and it takes a lot of work. It's not something that you can just show up and be good at. Some people may have more training at it. Some people may feel more confident about it. But it does take some time to work through. Is if you're at a normal store event, most likely you've never had to disqualify someone. I would say that a majority of judges at regular events do not have to disqualify.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. And so you may never have done this before. You may never have had to give someone a penalty before. Maybe you're a level 1 judge that focuses on their store and making their store the best place to play Magic it can be. And you've never had to give something like that. It takes a lot for a newer judge who's new to competitive events to have to do that.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to pull that.
Now, I will say this, which is that DQs aren't the best example for this because at regular REL, all the same stuff will get you a DQ.
It does.
DQs are actually one of the things that changes the least in between competitive and regular REL as far as rules and enforcement is concerned, because cheating is still a DQ, stealing is still a DQ, aggressive behavior is still a DQ. They don't call them like the official penalty names in the judging at regular REL document, but all the same.
Serious offenses.
Yeah, serious problems. Serious problems is what they have instead of unsporting conduct or whatever. So yeah, that is still going to be about the same. So hypothetically, your players should already be acquainted with that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, what I was trying to say is that you don't likely have to give out any sort of infraction or penalty.
Yeah.
The only thing that you will ever give out as a penalty at regular is a disqualification.
Right.
Okay, but you are correct. All the same offenses, they just have new names.
So any questions in the chat or any comments about how enforcement is different at a competitive REL event compared to a regular REL event?
Because we can go all night.
Oh yeah. So the next thing that I was going to talk about would be some of the logistical issues that are different. And so right out of the gate, one really big logistical thing kind of comes to mind. So I'm wondering if you have the same thing in mind as I do.
Number one most important?
No, number one like logistical challenge that regular REL does not have, but competitive REL does have.
I can think of so many.
Well, we'll be
take a
your
shot in
number
the dark.
one. We'll be your number
say,
one. My number one I have in mind already.
Say it on three. No, I would probably say I'm looking at table numbers as organization.
Interesting.
Organization as a whole of players in the right spots.
Okay. So
what are you thinking?
This is a thing like because you are probably going to be dealing with a lot of players who do not know each other. And that's going to be more prevalent at a competitive REL event because competitive REL events tend to draw people from a greater area.
Correct.
So it's going to be more of a big deal. For me, it was deck checks. Deck checks is the biggest thing. So because deck checks are not a thing at all at regular REL for the most part, they hypothetically could be. Did you know that? That is a legal thing that they can do. As the TO, they can insist that you do deck checks with deck lists, but they don't.
Yes.
But you do in competitive REL. So deck checks works a little bit differently in store level competitive REL events.
Ooh, I know one.
Yeah.
You need deck lists.
Yeah. That's true, of course, too.
But that's something that you do have to convey to players.
Yeah.
If you have to run deck checks at your competitive event, your players have to supply those deck lists.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You want to be proactive about that too, because if you're not used to having to fill out a deck list, then you aren't. So that means you have to be saying, like, at 15 minutes before the event starts, you would better be saying, like, hey, everybody remember, you need a deck list, so grab one of these and fill it out if you haven't done that, because you need a deck list, right? So that's another thing that it's important to be proactive about. It's a good idea to get ahead of the ball on that one, because if not, then you're for sure going to have somebody at the player meeting who's like, oh, I didn't know that you had a deck list. What can I have one of those listings and fill it out? And you'd be like, do one of those numbers. So yeah, that's another thing to be proactive about. So that's phase one is having deck lists and having deck lists filled out. Phase two is actually physically performing a deck check, because how many judges are there at
a nightmare.
How many judges are there at a competitive REL event, Dalton? At a
store level?
In a store.
You're looking at usually one.
Probably it's going to be this many, and for bigger ones, there will of course be more, but the overwhelming majority, I would say, like, it is 90+% of Comp REL events that are held at stores is one judge.
I would say, yeah. PPTQs and SCG invitationals.
Yeah. Because the attendance isn't there for a store owner to hire a second judge. Almost certainly. Like, if you think about, like, how much like compensation that a judge is going to cost, it's significant. And if you do, like, a little bit of math based on, like, how much the buy-in is, you're talking about a significant fraction of the tournament proceeds going directly into the judge's pocket. So as a result, it's going to be one judge most of the time. And as a result of that, if you are doing a deck check, you know what you aren't doing? Floor coverage. Yeah. So that's the thing. It makes it a little bit trickier. And this is one of the biggest things that I thought, like when PPTQs were first announced and I first started doing PPTQs, this was like one of the biggest question marks in my head. I was like, so what should I be doing then? Like MTR says I need to do deck checks. That's not negotiable. That is a must.
Correct.
But at the same time, who's going to be doing floor coverage during that time? So the system that I have that I think works very well, in my opinion, and so I'll share that with all of you at this time, is you do a deck check, and ordinarily, if your attendance numbers are like representative of what most of them would be, which would be like a 4 or a 5 round event that cups to the top 8, so like no more than about 30 or 40 players probably. That would be a case where you only need to deck check 4 times, right? Four is like a good number, and a lot of the time it's like 3. So that is the number of decks that need to be deck checked, right? So if you do 2 in a single round, that would mean you need to do deck checks during 2 rounds, right? That's what the math works out to be. So if we extrapolate that a little bit, that you can do 1 every round for 4 rounds, or you can do like 2 in the first round and second round, or whatever whatever 2 rounds you pick. So that's step 1 is you have to identify how many deck checks you want to do. Number 2 is actually physically doing them. So the way I like to do that is the best case scenario would be if there's a store employee who can help you out, right? So if you it's not hard to do a deck check, right? Like if you can teach somebody how to do a deck check while they're doing it with you, and that's no problem at all. You can definitely do that. And most people who are intelligent enough to run a cash register are also intelligent enough to like sort through a deck and check through, oh yeah, he's supposed to have 3 of these and 4 of those and 2 of those. So even if they don't play Magic, they still probably can do it, and you need to like help them out if they had foreign cards or something like that, but it's still better. So that'd be the best case scenario. If they do not have a person who's available to help you out for like 10 minutes, then you're gonna have to do it yourself. And do not try to do both decks at in one deck check, because that's not a good customer service thing. Because in order to do 2 deck checks, you're going to have both decks for like probably like 15 minutes. 15 minutes would be like 2 pretty quick deck checks.
Yes.
But that's still like a really long time to have somebody waiting out in limbo to get their decks back. So a better way to do it would be to deck check 1 person out of the 2 at random. And if you want to do another deck check that round, you can do like another table and you can take their decks. So you can do like a beginning and mid round if you want to do like that.
Yeah. I agree. And also, if you have someone at the store who may not know Magic as well, even something as simple as, hey, could you sort these cards for me? Put like cards in like piles. That takes your deck check from 10 minutes down to 4 minutes, because you can already check that off for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, 10 minutes is kind of a crazy amount of time, but you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Even just having them sort that out for you can make your job significantly easier.
Yeah.
And a lot of times at a game store, even someone who doesn't know how to play Magic is going to at least be comfortable enough to help you out.
Yeah. Now, you're probably going to be faster than them because you're going to be, like, presumably more experienced in doing deck checks. But at the same time, like, that doesn't say that you can't, like, help out for them by, like, doing the lands or doing the sideboard cards. And also, this is another important thing. If you only do 1 of the 2 decks because it's just you, shuffle the deck afterwards so that the people don't know which one of the 2 you did, because otherwise it's kind of an awkward situation if the players realize that, like, hey, my deck got deck checked and his didn't. So like that's kind of a bad customer service experience. And so you can avoid that by shuffling the deck, and then the players don't have that situation come up.
Yep. Head back to the table, say, hey, friends, everything checked out okay?
Yeah.
You're good to go here. Here's your time extension.
Yeah, and you don't have to tell
extension.
them. You don't forget the time extension, and you don't have to tell them that only one of the 2 got deck checked. You can leave that to be like a happy little mystery for them. So yeah, that is deck checks. That is the method that I use when I run PPTQs. And then that method has worked out very well for me in the past, and so like I'll pass that along to everybody. Any questions from the chat about deck checks and the logistics of running those at a competitive REL event in a store?
My first event I went to was 62 players at a competitive REL event, and I was an L1 at the time.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
And I swear I got for probably the entirety of the event, the entire 9 rounds of the event, I had maybe 4 or 5 calls.
Yeah.
I tried to do 2 deck checks during the game, 6 calls.
Yeah.
Among those 2 deck checks.
Now that's a good point. What happens in that case if someone has a judge call while you're in the middle of a deck check?
Because you have someone's expensive cards somewhere and they're not playing.
Yeah.
And then your call takes 10 minutes and oh my goodness, you've had this person's deck.
Yeah. So like there's a couple of options. Generally, what I like to do is when I'm deck checking. This is one of the reasons why I do this. When I deck check, I sort the cards into like 3 piles, and so I'll have like lands, non-lands, and lands, creatures, and prowesses. Because it's like
I got that.
So yeah, you got that, and then that is like phase 1, and so you can take all the stuff quickly and not undo your sorting when a judge call happens, so you don't have to like leave their stuff at the table. Then phase 2, if the judge call is going to take a long time, you just abandon ship and you give the stuff back to him and be like, okay, here you go, here's these back, get playing again. But that is very rare.
That's what I did.
That it doesn't happen very often, but that's what the protocol. Again, it's important to have like a plan in place for when the stuff happens, like because that'll like take the panic out of the situation. Like you don't want to get into an unusual situation and think, oh my gosh, what's going on? You get into an unusual situation and you already have an idea about what needs to happen. So that can be your plan.
Flustered.
Yeah. So that stuff like that will hopefully you won't be flustered if that happens to you.
Deck checks is something that you are going to hope and pray that you have someone to help you.
Yeah. I mean, like,
and what I did in that situation when I was doing the deck checks, I brought them back to the front counter of the store, but away from spectators. So I didn't want anyone else to be able to see the deck. You don't want an opponent who's already finished with their match to come up and look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I made sure to do that. Exactly. And then I said to the person who was running the counter, I said, hey, I have to go take this call. Please watch these cards.
Yeah, perfect.
And so if you have the ability, even someone who's busy with a register, busy helping customers, if they can at least watch that deck for you so you don't have to take it with you to the table.
Like, the amount of money in that cash register is probably like, has the potential to be on par with the amount of value that deck has. So like, that's a perfectly reasonable thing for even someone who doesn't know what Magic is. It's like, hey, here's this guy's deck. I need to take this call, so could you make sure no one like tampers with this or whatever. So that's excellent. That's exactly what I would have done in that same situation too, Dalton.
Yes. So deck checks are crazy. Table numbers are something that you really, really, really want to have at your event.
Same thing with result slips.
Because you are going to need to keep a hold of these. You want to know where your players are, because if you have a penalty, it's got to be recorded somewhere.
Yeah.
So you want to have those at the table for them to fill out and bring up to you. You want to make sure that players sign these. You don't just want the winner to come up and tell the person running the register, hey, I 2-0'd.
Yeah.
At an event like this, you need those slips filled out because you have to keep a hold of them.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you may have issues with wizards, right?
Yeah. Wizards hypothetically could. The reason they ask you to keep them is because like if someone's results get reported wrong, then that way they can like check and see if the slip was filled out wrong, in which case I don't think they do anything, or if the scorekeeper entered the slip in wrong, in which case they give the points to the correct person. And so if you have the result slips there, then you can say, hey, look, here's our result slip. You signed it. If if you won this match, then you shouldn't have signed it saying that you lost the match.
Exactly.
So that is the purpose of those, and that is why Wizards ask you to keep them. So it is important for cases like that where someone is disputing the amount of Planeswalker points that they got for a specific event.
Exactly. And so you'll want to make sure that your players have these. When you go to pass out match slips, it really helps if your players are organized.
Yeah.
I mean, if you show up to your PPTQ and there are 8 people playing, and you go straight to top 8, then it's not as big of a deal where your players sit because you have 8.
Yeah.
You have 4 matches.
And you just have the bracket too.
But when you have 60 some odd players and you need to make sure that your slips can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and everyone goes and picks their own table, then you don't know where these slips are going to. Mm-hmm. And if you're, I don't know about your experience, but my average travel time for a PPTQ is not in my city. I'm not going to know those players.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I can't say, okay, well, this is John Smith. I know him. He's a local. Because I'm not a local.
Yeah. Like, how would you know, like, which match to give stuff at? So, yeah, you need the players sitting in a discernible order for out-of-towners, you and them. Mm-hmm. You need the result slips to give the penalties out and to keep for the store. Mm-hmm. And so that's another important logistical issue that generally you don't have to take as seriously at a regular relevant, especially like a local type of a tournament. Mm-hmm. So okay, there's that. Then there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about, which is like supplies. So like the paper cutter is a big one for the result slips. Like if your store does not have a paper cutter, then that makes result slips a lot more challenging, doesn't it?
David, I have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
Can you cut match slips with scissors?
You could.
Do you ever want to?
I would avoid it if possible.
You never want to.
It's surprisingly difficult to get a straight cut with a pair of scissors.
Even 4 is just annoying.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. Because what'll happen is, like, the scissors cut by, like, a shear action, right? So they cut by, like, doing this. And so what that does is when the papers go across, here, use your hands to represent the paper.
Oh, okay.
So when the paper is there, like the sheets of paper are getting slid this way because the scissors are pushing down on them like that. So yeah, that's our very crude physics demonstration for why a paper cutter exists. It's they exist because of that exact problem that we illustrated for you on stream there.
I'm ashamed of that illustration.
What? No, that was very good. Like, it was a step above my like crudely drawn Pixar or pixel art representation of that same type of phenomenon.
But if you have 8 papers that you're cutting each round,
no way.
Then getting those out as fast as possible. If you have to cut them by hand, then players could be done with their match by the time they receive their slip.
That's kind of pushing it, but like it could.
I'm just saying, hypothetically, if you are bad at cutting and both players are on
a professional,
some ridiculous deck.
Yeah.
Think about back in Flash Hulk.
Oh gosh, I was not judging.
You mean to tell me that I might not be able to cut 10 sheets of paper with scissors faster than they can play Flash Hulk?
If they have a store that's big enough for 10 sheets of paper cutting, then they probably have a paper cutter.
I'm just saying, hypothetical.
So that's another thing to like keep in mind. You might have to be flexible because if you don't have a paper cutter, then you don't have a paper cutter. But
Turn 1, Burning Inquiry, cycle 4 Street Wraith, play 4 Hollow Ones, opponent scoops.
Yeah, I would scoop.
I'm just saying, games can go fast.
That would be a very unlucky sequence of events.
Games can go fast.
So okay, so that is all of the like result slip stuff. Was there another logistical challenge that we wanted to talk about here?
Pairings. Yeah. Chances are you're going to be running a larger event than your regular REL because competitive events bring people in. People will travel for hours to get to an event, possibly.
Oh yeah,
not everyone will.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But every event that I've done, I've had people from over an hour away there and present because maybe they want to make the RPTQ. Maybe they're really incentivized by the prize pool that's available. Some PPTQs have amazing prize pools. Sometimes they go with a friend and their friend was planning on going, so they hop in and they're also going. People travel a long ways. So you're going to have large crowds. Make sure your store can handle that. Make sure you have a plan for posting pairings that everyone can see and is available. Because, maybe with your average F&M of 8 people, you can just say, John's playing Jane, Alex is playing Nick, and it works. Not here. Make sure you're ready.
Right.
Winter is coming.
So the next thing that's on our show notes is a very important topic for all judges.
We got notes.
Yeah. That's what we do to keep ourselves organized. So this topic is, of course, compensation, right? So if you're at an event, you're judging that event. And regular REL, if it's a store level regular REL, that's okay to do like for free or like not any money consideration, but like maybe you get like a free entry into the event instead of having to pay for the entry fee, or maybe you get like an open fridge for drinks and snacks and stuff. But if we're talking about competitive REL, we're talking serious business, we're talking serious judging business, and that means serious business in another way.
Magic is a skilled labor.
Sort of.
I'm
skilled.
There are certifications.
Yeah.
You have to be certified to run these events, PPTQs and stuff like that. You need to be an L2. You need to put in the time and the effort.
Yeah, and if they don't think that it's worth, having someone get paid to do that job, then, I wouldn't. I would play and judge in an event for free. Like, that's fine with me. But I'm not, like, traveling somewhere so that I can be there for 6 hours and then like go home for free. Like that's no bueno on that. That hard pass on that situation.
I bring up if you run a store and your toilet's broken, you call the plumber out and they fix your toilet, and then you say, oh well, you can use it for free.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
that really doesn't do anything for the plumber there.
Yeah, it'd be like, hey, think about it this way: that plumber probably wouldn't even accept store credit. So
that's very true. So
you should be getting compensated because if you're judging a competitive REL event, then you are doing something that you wouldn't have been doing ordinarily. Like if you're like judging F&M while you're playing at it, you probably would have been there anyway, even if you weren't judging it. So like that's not like taking anything away from you. But if you're traveling to their store to judge their event, and you're staying there for the whole 6 rounds and then the top 8, then that is taking away your free time that you could have been like, watching Netflix, or, maybe having a, romantic encounter with a significant other.
Watching Judging for the Win.
Yeah, catching up on the backlog.
Just saying.
Yeah, like lots of stuff you could have been doing in your free time, and instead you are, selflessly making it so that people can do this event that they're doing. So don't give that away. What is your time worth? That is an eternal question, and I am not going to offer any personal opinions on specific dollar amounts or specific amounts of like booster packs or store credit. That sort of thing varies widely within regions, and so like any advice I would have would only really be applicable to judges in and around this specific part of the Great Lakes region. So, but I will tell you that if there's other judges in the area, ask around.
Supply and demand.
Yeah, well, I mean, ask what they would think is a reasonable amount, because that can give you like a baseline to kind of have an idea in your mind about how much other judge X thinks that their time is worth this much. So maybe my time would probably be worth a similar amount.
The same.
If you don't have other judges around in the same area, you could take that to your regional coordinator and pose those questions to them, and they would have like a reasonable idea of what an ordinary reasonable amount of compensation you could request is.
I agree. And something else to consider there is, let's say David puts his number at X.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, X is a good number. That keeps both of us at a happy median.
Yeah.
If David says he'll do it for X, and I say, okay, well, I want to make sure I'm staffed, so I'm going to do it for half of X. Then not only is that probably no longer worth my time, but now all these stores
I'm gonna tell you right
David
now,
was at.
if I am charging X and you're charging half X, you are way getting.
Yes.
Like, my time is not worth a lot, but half of what my time is worth is very little.
But what that does to David is people who are asking him to run their events may say, oh, well, why will I pay David X when there's someone else around who will do it for half of that? And then all of a sudden, now David and I are no longer friends because I've completely run him out of the game. You want to make sure you're being considerate of others as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, that I think isn't a big deal for me. Like, I personally don't use that kind of thinking. Like, if my time is legitimately worth a certain amount of money and Dalton's time is legitimately worth a certain other amount of money, then it shouldn't be the sort of thing where, like, I am going to charge more because I know that Dalton, like, charges the same amount. You know, that's not like a good business practice, because ideally when you're working with these store owners, you should be building a relationship with them, right? Like, pretty much I judge like a bunch of PPTQs. Every single store that I judge at, I've run their PPTQ at least once before, and in many cases I've run their PPTQ for several years now. And the reason that I keep coming to those stores and the reason that those stores keep hiring me is because I have a relationship with those store owners. And
that's a really great feeling.
Yeah, like that's what you should be going for. You shouldn't be like having an adversarial kind of a, you know, like, I want to get this much, and so like I'm taking away from you, and I want to make sure I judge this many PPTQs, so I really need this guy to hire me. Like, that isn't the kind of attitude you want to be going into. You want to be going into this like with the same attitude that hopefully your store owner is, which is that, like, you're a businessman. Or a business.
They're a business person.
Yeah, they're a business person, and so when you've got two business people who both want the same thing, which, you know, in this case would be like, I want this person to judge this event, and you know, I'm prepared to give them this amount of value. Then you work out a business deal, and if you are satisfied with the results of that, then you go to the next time. And so after a certain number of times, you build up a relationship with them, because you have a reputation now of working hard and being worth the amount of money that they're paying you. And so if you are in a situation where you're charging too much, then naturally what will happen is, after a while, the store will start to question, why am I paying this judge this amount of money every time I have a PPTQ or I have a competitive REL event?
Yep.
And so, like, at the same time, if you're not getting paid enough, what'll happen is you will come to realize that your time is actually worth more than that, and you're not going to want to work events there. And so those types of things would be the end of that relationship. So what you really want is you want to come to a mutually beneficial agreement with your store owner, and that is what your price should be set at. And, you know, you can use other judges' rates as kind of like a baseline to give yourself an idea of how much your time would be worth. But at the same time, like,
you're not them.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I don't have a family. Let's
finish the thought here.
I don't have like a wife and kids who need their husband/father to be around for them. So my time would be worth less than someone who does, and who's giving up a Saturday of spending time with their wife and kids. See, like, my time spending watching Netflix is worth less than, you know, some father or parent or you know, husband, wife. That's like a consideration that you have to do. And so that's the sort of thing. Like, you don't want to say, okay, Judge A is charging this much, therefore this is how much it should be.
Exactly. What I was bringing up early is I was hoping to give that was kind of the thing that I first used when I started offering events. I wanted to know how much other people were offering their services for, so that I could get a general idea. If David says that he'll do it for X, and I say I'm going to do it for half of X because I don't want them to say no, then
that's not the cornerstone of a mutually beneficial business relationship.
Exactly. Likewise, if David charges X and I go to the store and I say, well, I want 7X because that's what my time's worth.
Yeah.
Then I should probably know that is no way in, you know.
Yeah, they're not going to say yes. And like,
ever gonna happen.
That's another thing. Like, if your time is legitimately worth, like, you know, if you don't want to do something, you can say no. You don't have to be like, yeah, I want $500 and you know, 3 boxes is probably what I would to judge this event. So, like, you know, just say no. If you can't do it, say no. They'll hopefully understand and get someone else.
But then you also have to think about what you're missing.
Yeah.
So, for example, say you want to apply to U.S. Nationals.
Hey, that's this weekend.
But a store wants you to run a PPTQ.
Hey, that's what happened to me this weekend.
So David's in this situation right now. Maybe that time that David has for the PPTQ is going to be worth more to him because he can no longer apply to work nationals.
Yeah. Well, it's worth more, like, I'm working this PPTQ this weekend because I have a relationship with this business owner, and that is worth more to me than getting staffed on nationals where I could be making more money.
Yeah, so always think about not only what you're going to be doing, but also what you're going to be missing out on.
You want to think long term, and you want to think, like that's the kind of ideas that you want to do. Yeah.
And then additionally, think, okay, how often am I working other events? Like, how likely is it that I'm going to be in town and be able to develop a relationship with this person? Think about what your position is going to be. Are you going to be solely judging and they have someone else to run the computer and cut the slips and do everything else? Are you always going to be working by yourself? Are they always going to have someone there with you? Are they going to offer you gas money? Are they going to pay for your lunch or your dinner? Are you going to get store credit, or are you going to get cash or product? There are so many different factors that you can take into compensation. It does not just have to be dollar figures.
Yeah.
And or for my friends out there, euros or whatever you want to use.
Yeah. So Dalton brought up a really important point, and this is one of the most important things as far as compensation goes that I want to share with everybody, which is you're going to be at that store for like probably 6 hours, and that's like a minimum, right? Like for judging an event, that'd be like the top 8 would last like 2 hours, and then there's like 4 rounds before that. Yeah, I'd say like 6 hours is like probably a good baseline. Maybe 5 if you're running like a really small, pretty quick event. So here's the deal. You're going to get hungry. You're going to need a meal. You're going to need to make sure that you have access to that. And so that is one of the first things that I bring up in my like talk. When I've been doing this for a while, and I do it with a lot of people. So I have like basically I have a set like amount that I say, okay, this is how much money it would take to induce me to go to your store and do this event for you. And for me, that always includes a meal. Like if I'm going to be there during a meal time, you need to make sure that I have food to eat, so that I and that's important. Like that is a very important thing because that is directly related to you doing a good job, right? Like if I'm hungry and if I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, a pizza would be so great right now, I'm not doing a good job of judging, and that is a fact. That is a fact. And so as a result of that, every time if I'm going to a store, I need to have a plan for like what am I going to do for food, because that is by far an important thing to my doing a good job at the task that I've been hired to do.
Yep. And then additionally, maybe consider how much you're getting paid versus that meal cost. So maybe the store is willing to offer you $20 more, but not provide food for you. Yeah. Is that worth it?
I mean,
probably. I would say so.
Yeah, it'd be worth it, like contingent on the fact that they would be okay with me like bringing food in
or ordering. Yeah, so I had that happen at a store I went to. It was very hasty negotiations. It was a last minute sort of thing. I gave them a number, and I found out that number was a lot higher than the previous judge's compensation. And the store owner was in a desperate pinch. They really needed the assistance, so they said, okay. When I got there, I was fully ready to order food. I was comfortable paying with it myself because I found out that I was going to be earning more than the previous judge had. And it turned out that the store owner went ahead and threw that in anyways, in addition. And I was very happy. But that's something you need to think about.
It's an important thing to be on the same page.
You don't have to ask for food in what you're asking for. You don't have to ask for gas. But make sure you know that, and make sure you know your expectations versus their expectations.
Yeah, because if you're like coming in and you're expecting them to feed you and they were not expecting that, then that's like an awkward situation all around.
So as much as you can, try to prepare.
Yeah. All right. Any other points that you wanted to cover on compensation? Anything in the chat? Anything in the chat? Any questions about compensation for working these events?
Compensation is one of those things that you'll always, when you start doing it, you'll always feel awkward about.
Yeah, I mean, like nobody likes talking about money. We're kind of like taught from a very early age that talking about money is awkward. This is one of those habits that you need to kind of break. And I kind of compare it to leadership personally. Like a lot of people in the judge program, judging is their first exposure to actual leadership. It's actually very, very rare for somebody to be in charge of another person or group of people in average everyday life. for people in the age demographic that judging tends to be
Yes.
dominated by. So with that being the case, it's you kind of have to like overwrite some of your previous ways of thinking, and that's the same sort of thing that you have to do when it comes to talking about compensation. You need to understand that this is an important topic to talk about. It's an important topic for everybody to be on the same page about, and as a result, there shouldn't be any like shame in demanding that. If I'm going to be doing this service for you, you need to be compensating me for performing that service, because that's how money works, right?
Yes.
Like,
and then you also want to consider, okay, so hypothetical, store tells you that they're going to have 8 people show up because that's all that they told about. They said, we're going to run this PPTQ, and we only told 8 people that they're going to be there. Stupid hypothetical, but whatever. They say, look, it's going to take like 3 hours. You're running 3 rounds. We're going to give you $50. Okay, cool. You show up, and there's 70 players. Is that same amount of time going to be worth $50 to you?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to renegotiate there. If something that a store owner has told you is vastly different, and I'm not saying that, a few extra players showing up is going to change that. But if what they say is vastly different from what you negotiated for, that's okay to talk about.
Yeah. And at the same time, this is one of those things with we talked about before about having a relationship. If you have a good working relationship, they're not going to spring details like that on you once you're there. No. If they're the sort of store that does that, then I would consider not having a relationship with a store owner who's going to do stuff like that and think it's okay to do.
Yeah, that would be more of a first time with them.
Yeah, like everybody makes mistakes, but if you're making mistakes and not actively working to make those situations better, then you got to kind of take that into account with the whole like how much is my time worth kind of calculus.
Yeah, because if you say, oh well, 3 hours of my time is worth $50, that can be true. Is 10 hours of your time going to be worth the same amount?
Probably not.
If you're good at math, it is not.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one of those like questions that they have on the iSteps where like the train A is traveling at like 30 miles an hour and it costs $5
People outside
to board
of Indiana
the train.
aren't going to know iStep, David.
Yeah,
Your standardized testing.
When I was the first tournament that I worked, when I was not yet a certified judge, there was some mentoring going on, and they were talking about the layers, and this judge was talking about the mnemonic he used to remember the layers, which was that cops control the TCAP. Which is apparently what the standardized test. He was a teacher from Tennessee, so he knew what a TCAP was. I did not. So as a result, that's what we have in Indiana. Is we have the iStep, and boy oh boy, I have some fond memories of that test. I was always like I'm real big on tests, so I took that iStep.
I could see that.
I
could definitely.
Oh wow! So it's like an entire day of school, and all we get to do is take tests. That's awesome. Ooh, for a whole week even. All right. So I was excited about it. Others maybe not as much, but that's fine.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much covers it for compensation.
Yes. Yeah.
We talked about that quite a bit.
So closing thoughts on running a store.
One last thing I would like to throw out there is you want to be aware of yourself in this situation, in that your role at a competitive event is going to be much more professional than at a regular event.
Yes.
If you're running your FNM at your store and you're sitting behind the counter on your phone because the store owner says so, that's fine. I don't think anyone would have a problem with that. If whenever someone has a question, you're there to answer, and you're friendly and you're courteous, maybe that flies at your store and no one has a problem with it. But if you're running a competitive event, and especially if you're wearing, your Magic shirt and you're actively representing the organization, you want to remain as professional and courteous as necessary for the event.
Yeah.
You don't want to blow your players off. If a player comes to you with a question, you don't want to be on your phone texting during it, because that makes the level of professionalism in your event go way down.
Customer service.
Your customer service is key here.
And yeah, this kind of goes back to relationship building too, which is that like if you have a relationship with your players, you and your players know what the social norms are. If you are in an environment where you're dealing with a bunch of new players, the social norms are kind of like a little bit more nebulous.
They're gone.
And so as a result of that, it's important for you as the de facto authority figure in the situation to be at or above what the level that they're expecting is. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad experience, a bad customer service experience for the player.
Yeah, these players look up to you as the head honcho. You are supposed to be the voice of reason in this event. And if the voice of reason is too busy watching videos online of this new weird deck, then
the Kirkland Ironworks deck?
Of those crazy deck videos online, then paying attention to their event, which is being run at Competitive REL, because maybe there's a lot of money at stake, then you need to reevaluate your performance. Because with bigger prizes and with a competitive event, you're looking at more on the line. I'm not going to say that it makes people more likely to cheat, but it would incentivize people more to cheat.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Like having more money on the line means that people are more incentivized to cheat, which means more people will cheat.
So being out on the floor
think
and being proactive and watching Magic is exactly what you should be doing during these events.
Absolutely.
This shouldn't be 9 hours of you sitting on your phone waiting to go home.
Yeah.
This should be 9 hours of you running an event.
Yeah, because remember, like we were saying before, you are getting paid to do a job. You should be doing a good job because reputation is huge. It's huge. Like if you're a judge and you have a good reputation, other store owners will tell their friends, who are also store owners. They'll say, hey, I staffed Dave on this event, and Dave does a really good job for me at our PPTQs. So if you're looking for someone to do a PPTQ for you, here's who I would recommend. And you grow your brand that way. And it's the same thing. Like if you judge your first GP and you make a good impression, then it makes it easier to get staffed on your next GP.
Exactly.
But if you make a bad impression, then it makes it harder to get staffed on your next GP. So when you get these opportunities, it's important for you to make the most of them.
And if you're a level 1 who's looking to start getting into big events,
that's
then
correct.
Excelling at store level competitive events is a great way to do that. Maybe your store does run larger events and you're there with an L2 judge. If they work bigger events and they can put in a good word for you in the bigger events, that Star City Games, the Grand Prix, the Pastimes or Card King, whatever events out there, if they can give you that good word because they've had experience with you and know you to be a professional, reputable judge, then that's going to bode incredibly well for your chances.
Yeah. Isn't that what happened to you, Dalton?
That's exactly what happened to me, David.
And he's great. Everybody should hire Dalton for running your PPTQs. Except if I'm working your PPTQs. If I'm free that weekend, then I'll do it at half the rate that Dalton would charge.
Ha! Well, if that's the case, then my rate's double because I want you to be well compensated.
Okay, there you go. All right, so closing thoughts and wrap up here for judging store level events. Number one, it's important to be on top of your game because it's more serious at Competitive REL, as the name suggests. Number two, there's some logistical issues that are important for you to keep on top of that do not translate into a regular sphere. And number three, make sure you're getting what your time is worth. In regular REL, it's far more commonplace for somebody who is working the event for like free or free entry or some other like basically non-monetary type of compensation. But in competitive REL, if you're not going to be able to play, then you aren't. You're going to an event that you wouldn't have gone to anyway, or you would have gotten to play in anyway, and that is something that is worth time. Your time is worth something. So those are the three like kind of biggest big takeaways about judging a store level competitive REL event. It is a very different experience from judging a competitive REL event at a Grand Prix or an SCG or a big event where there's going to be teams of judges, and so it's kind of an interesting thing to think about and how those same types of challenges correspond and what the differences are logistically and how those get handled.
Yeah. So with your events, good luck. Have fun.
Yeah, good luck and have fun. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Have a good night.